Ladies and gentlemen, we often hear that the main reason relationships fail is because of cheating. Infidelity gets all the blame, and yes, it can be devastating, but the truth is, there's a far more common and silent killer of relationships: emotional silence. You see, when we talk about relationships failing, the story most people tell is about cheating, about betrayal, infidelity, and broken vows. That story has become so familiar that it almost feels like the only reason relationships crash. And yes, cheating is painful and can devastate a marriage or partnership. But let me be very clear with you today. The primary reason 70% of relationships crash is not because someone was unfaithful. It's because of something far more subtle, far less obvious, and yet far more deadly: emotional silence. Emotional silence is when two people stop sharing the real, raw parts of their hearts with each other. It's when the conversation shifts from honest, open dialogue to surface level exchanges where feelings are locked away, unspoken, and unattended. You might not notice it at first because it creeps in quietly, like a slow leak in a tire. But over time, it deflates the connection until there's nothing left but distance and isolation. Think for a moment about what a relationship is really supposed to be. It's not just about living under the same roof or sharing expenses or raising kids together. A relationship, especially a marriage, is meant to be a deep spiritual and emotional union. It's a sacred covenant where two souls are joined to walk through life as one, to bear each other's burdens, to rejoice in each other's joys, and to support one another through trials. And that union thrives on communication, real communication, not just words tossed around to get by, but the kind that breaks down walls, exposes fears, and invites vulnerability. When emotional silence takes hold, that communication stops. One or both partners begin to shut down their hearts. They stop telling their spouse what's really going on inside: their worries, their disappointments, their dreams, and yes, even their struggles with doubt or temptation. Maybe it's out of fear that their feelings won't be understood or accepted, fear that speaking honestly might lead to conflict or rejection, fear that they're simply not worthy of being loved fully if they reveal their imperfections. Or sometimes it's weariness. The daily grind of work, kids, bills, and responsibilities can exhaust a person emotionally, and instead of reaching out for connection, they retreat into silence, thinking, "I'll just keep this to myself." They convince themselves that sharing won't change anything, so why bother? And so the silence grows. This silence creates a vacuum, a place where misunderstanding and resentment settle like dust. When emotions aren't voiced, they don't disappear, they fester. Small frustrations that could have been addressed early spiral into bitterness. Hopes that could have been nurtured with encouragement begin to die quietly, and the couple begins to live parallel lives, physically close but emotionally miles apart. It's important to understand that emotional silence isn't just about what's not said, it's about what that absence of sharing does. It tells your partner, "I'm not safe here, I can't be myself with you." And when a person feels unsafe to open their heart, they close it and they protect themselves from pain by building walls, and those walls are nearly impossible to tear down without deliberate effort. Now some might say, but isn't silence sometimes a way to keep peace, to avoid arguments? Yes, it can seem that way, but peace built on silence is a false peace. It's like ignoring a wound because it's uncomfortable to look at, hoping it will heal on its own. But wounds don't heal without care, and neither do relations. True peace and real intimacy come from the courage to speak truth in love, to say the hard things with gentleness, and to listen with an open heart. It requires stepping out of comfort zones and facing discomfort head on, knowing that the goal is not to win an argument but to understand and be understood. This is where many relationships fall short. We want to be known deeply, but we're afraid of being truly seen. We long for connection, but we don't want to risk the vulnerability it demands, and so we settle for silence, thinking it's safer, but it's not. I want to challenge you today to consider what emotional silence might be doing in your relation. Are you sharing your inner life with your partner, your fears, your struggles, your hopes, or have you stopped talking about what really matters? Are you listening deeply when your partner opens up, or do you find yourself distracted, ready to change the subject, or even judging silently? I'm not asking for perfection. None of us have perfect communication all the time, but I am urging you to break the cycle of silence before it breaks your relationship. Remember, emotional silence is a sign that something deeper is wrong. It's a symptom of disconnected heart, and if left unchecked, it leads to a relationship's slow death, far more often than a sudden betrayal. I want you to imagine what could happen if you and your partner chose today to open your hearts again, to say, I'm listening, I want to know what's in your heart, even if it's hard. To risk honesty and vulnerability even when it feels risky. To invite each other into that sacred space where true intimacy is born. This is the work of love, not easy, but necessary, not comfortable, but life-giving. When you break emotional silence, you breathe life back into your relationship. You rebuild the bridge that connects two souls. You create a safe harbor where trust and love can flourish once more. Don't wait until silence has done its damage. Don't wait until you feel too far apart to reach across the gap. Start today with one honest conversation, one moment of listening without judgment, one act of courageous vulnerability, because the survival of your relationship depends not on whether you never fail, but on whether you refuse to stay silent. When we consider why so many relationships fall apart, it's not just the absence of communication that causes the problem, it's the lack of open communication. There's a vast difference between talking to each other and truly communicating. Many couples get stuck in a cycle of superficial conversations that barely scratch the surface of what's really going on inside their heart. They talk about the weather, about schedules, about daily chores, but they stop sharing what really matters. And this lack of open communication builds walls between them, walls that grow higher and thicker with every unspoken word. Communication is the lifeblood of any relationship. It's how we connect, understand, and respond to one another. Without it, we are strangers, sharing space. But open communication, the kind where you don't just hear words but actually listen with your heart, that's the foundation for intimacy and trust. When that open channel closes, misunderstanding takes root and the distance grows. It's easy to mistake silence or surface talk for peace, but real peace comes from clarity and honesty. When couples stop communicating openly, they begin to make assumptions about each other's thoughts, feelings, and intentions. They fill the gaps with stories that often aren't true, stories fueled by fear, insecurity, or pride. Instead of asking what's really going on with you, they withdraw or lash out because they feel unseen or unheard. Misunderstandings grow in the dark. Without open communication, a small hurt can become a deep wound. One partner might say or do something with no ill intent, but because the other isn't fully listening or hasn't shared their true feelings, resentment builds. Over time, those resentments pile up like stones, creating a wall that blocks love from flowing freely. The irony is that many couples want connection more than anything, but their very actions or lack thereof keep them apart. They long for their partner to understand them, to care for them deeply, yet they withhold their real feelings. Maybe because they fear being vulnerable, maybe because they worry about judgment, or perhaps because they don't know how to express themselves clearly. Whatever the reason, this lack of openness feeds the distance. I want you to imagine a garden. For it to thrive, it needs sunlight, water, and care. Without those, the plants wither and die. A relationship is no different. Open communication is like sunlight and water. It nourishes and strengthens the bond. When the sunlight of honest conversation fades, the garden of love begins to wilt. Now, this isn't about airing every grievance or having endless arguments. Open communication is not an excuse for constant conflict. It's about creating a safe space where both partners feel free to express their true feelings, hopes, and struggles without fear of rejection or dismissal. It's about listening with empathy, not just waiting to reply or defend yourself. Too often couples listen to respond instead of listen to understand. That's a dangerous trap. When we listen to respond, we're already preparing our defense or rebuttal, and the heart of the message gets lost. But when we listen to understand, we open ourselves to seeing the other person's perspective, even when it's difficult. We acknowledge their pain, their needs, and their desires, and in doing so, we invite healing and connection. Open communication also means being willing to be vulnerable. It means admitting when you're wrong, sharing your fears, or asking for help. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the greatest strength in a relationship. It says, I trust you enough to show you my brokenness, and when that happens, love deepens. But why is open communication so hard? Because it requires humility and courage. It means setting aside pride and fear and being honest even when it's uncomfortable. It means risking rejection to be truly known, and that can be terrifying. Many couples avoid open communication because they fear conflict or believe that some things are better left unsaid. But silence doesn't protect relationships, it damages them. Unspoken truths create invisible barriers that separate heart, and when those barriers go unaddressed, they grow until they become impenetrable. So what does open communication look like in everyday life? It starts with small things, checking in with your partner and asking, how are you really? It's making time to talk without distractions, putting down your phone, turning off the TV, and being present. It's about sharing your day honestly, your struggles and your joys, and inviting your partner to do the same. It also means paying attention to nonverbal cues. Sometimes what isn't said aloud speaks volumes. A look, a sigh, a change in tone can reveal emotions that words don't. When you notice these, don't ignore them. Ask gently, I sense something's on your mind. Would you like to talk about it? That simple question can open the door to deeper connection. And when your partner does open up, receive it with grace. Don't interrupt, judge, or offer solutions immediately. Sometimes the greatest gift is just to listen, to hold space without fixing or dismissing. This kind of listening builds trust and shows your partner they are valued and understood. Open communication also involves setting boundaries kindly. It means saying, I need some time to process this, but I want to come back and talk about it, rather than shutting down or walking away in frustration. It means being honest about what you can handle emotionally and asking for patience or support when needed. I want to be clear, open communication isn't always easy or comfortable. It requires work, patience, and a willingness to face uncomfortable truths, but it is absolutely necessary if you want a relationship that lasts and grows in love. If you're feeling stuck, begin with prayer or quiet reflection. Ask for the courage to be honest and the grace to listen well, and then take one step. A simple conversation, a heartfelt question, a sincere apology, or an invitation to share your heart. That one step can begin to break down the walls of misunderstanding. Remember, no relationship can thrive on assumptions and silence. It needs the life-giving flow of open, honest communication to grow. When you invest in this kind of dialogue, you invest in the very foundation of your love. Without it, even the strongest bonds can weaken and eventually break. But with it, there is hope for healing, renewal, and a deep, abiding connection that can withstand life's storms. This is the path to lasting intimacy, the willingness to speak, to listen, and to understand with open hearts. There is a truth about human nature that we often avoid facing, especially when it comes to our relationships. Deep inside, we are afraid to show our real selves, afraid to reveal the parts of us that are broken, weak, or imperfect. And it is this fear, this trembling hesitation to be vulnerable, that quietly builds walls between us and those we love most. We live in a world that celebrates strength, independence, and control. From childhood, many of us are taught to hide our fears, to mask our doubts, to appear unshakable. Vulnerability is seen as weakness, something to be ashamed of, something to protect at all costs. So when we enter into relationships, into marriage, partnership, or even close friendship, we bring those fears with us. We want to be loved, yet we're terrified that if we truly show ourselves, our partner might reject us. So we stay silent, we hold back, we build an emotional fortress around our hearts. This is the root of emotional silence. It is not simply that we don't talk, it is that we don't dare to talk. We fear what might happen if we do. What if they judge me? What if they think less of me? What if they leave? So we bury our feelings, our struggles, our needs deep inside, hoping they will never be discovered. But those unspoken things don't vanish. They fester. They create a chasm between two people who were meant to be one. Vulnerability means stepping into uncertainty. It means risking pain for the sake of connection. It means showing your true self, not just the polished version you want others to see, but the raw, messy, broken parts too. It means saying, "Here I am, all of me. I am afraid. I am struggling. I am not enough. Will you still love me?" That is terrifying. It requires courage, humility, and trust, and yet it is only through this kind of vulnerability that real intimacy can flourish. Without it, relationships become hollow shells where two people coexist but do not truly connect. Too often, couples mistake emotional silence for peace or stability. They believe that not talking about difficult feelings or problems keeps the relationship safe, but that is a lie. Silence is not peace. It is a quiet death. It steals away joy, erodes trust, and breeds misunderstanding. When we refuse to be vulnerable, we close off the very pathways through which love flows. We stop allowing our partner to see who we really are, our fears, our hurts, our hopes, and our dreams. And without that seeing and knowing, connection fades. We become strangers, living under the same roof. I want you to consider the weight of carrying your fears alone. Imagine what it means to hide your pain day after day, to pretend everything is fine when inside you are struggling. It's exhausting, it's lonely, and over time it hardens the heart. This fear of vulnerability also leads to a dangerous cycle of misunderstanding. When one partner closes off emotionally, the other can feel shut out, confused, or rejected. They may try to reach out, only to be met with silence or defensiveness. Frustration grows, walls get higher, and trust diminishes. Breaking free from this cycle demands something powerful: the willingness to be vulnerable. It requires saying, "I am scared, but I want to trust you. I want us to be real with each other, even if it's hard." It means opening your heart to the possibility of pain, because without pain, there is no true connection. Creating an environment where vulnerability is safe is essential. It means responding with grace, patience, and love when your partner does open up. It means listening without judgment, without trying to fix or dismiss. It means being present and affirming, saying without words, "You are loved just as you are." Vulnerability also means admitting our mistakes, confessing our doubts, and asking for help. It means dropping our masks and showing the real struggles we face. And when we do this, we give our partner permission to do the same. We move from isolation into union. The greatest relationships are built not on perfection, but on honest, vulnerable hearts, willing to walk through brokenness together. It is a sacred journey, one that requires courage, humility, and grace. I want you to know that this kind of vulnerability is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. It is the willingness to be seen fully and loved fully. It is what transforms two separate people into one flesh, into a union that can withstand the storms of life. Jesus showed us this in the deepest way. He did not hide his pain, his sorrow, or his loneliness. He bore it openly, laying down his life out of love. If we are to build relationships that reflect that kind of love, we too must be willing to be vulnerable. So I challenge you today to break the silence, to risk opening your heart even when it feels unsafe, to speak honestly about your fears and needs, to listen with compassion when your partner does the same. Do not let fear keep you from the intimacy you long for. Do not let pride or shame build walls where bridges should. Choose vulnerability, choose courage, choose love, because it is only when we dare to be vulnerable that the silence breaks and true connection begins. There is a longing built deep within every human soul, a longing to be known, to be seen, to be heard. We may try to act like we don't need much, like we're strong enough to go it alone, but at our core we're created for connection, for intimacy, for love that meets us not just in the grand gestures, but in the quiet, unseen places of our heart. And when those emotional needs, the need to be valued, to be affirmed, to be comforted, go unmet, a quiet ache begins to form. Left unspoken, that ache turns into resentment, and left unattended, it becomes the silent reason so many relationships slowly wither and die. It's not always loud. It's not always obvious. It doesn't always come with shouting matches or slamming doors. Sometimes the death of a relationship is quiet, barely noticed at first. One heart slowly begins to shut down, not because of hatred or betrayal, but because it's been empty for too long. And often, it's not because the other person doesn't care, but because no one ever said, "I need this from you," and no one ever noticed they're hurting. We assume people will just know what we need. We assume they'll pick up on the hints, read between the lines, or sense it by instinct. But love, real love, doesn't survive on assumptions. It grows in the soil of intentionality. It grows when needs are named, heard, and met with tenderness. But so often, in relationships, we don't say what we need. Maybe because we don't know how. Maybe because we're afraid we'll seem needy or weak. Maybe we've tried before and been ignored or misunderstood, so we stay quiet. We tell ourselves it's not that important. We bury the need deeper, hoping it will just go away. But it never does. It grows in silence. And this silence is dangerous, because when you don't express your needs, you start to feel invisible. You begin to believe that your voice doesn't matter, that your heart doesn't matter. And slowly, you stop reaching out. You stop trusting that your partner can or will be there for you. What was once vibrant becomes mechanical. What was once warm becomes distant. I've seen it over and over. Couples who live under the same roof but haven't truly connected in years. They eat meals together. They go to events together. But the emotional lifeline that once connected their hearts is frayed and thin, because somewhere along the way, needs were left unspoken, unattended, and now unmet. And both of them feel it, even if they can't put it into words. And let's not pretend that emotional needs are optional. They are as real as physical hunger. The need to feel understood, the need for affirmation, the need to be pursued, to be comforted in sorrow, to be noticed in stress. These are not luxuries. These are soul-level needs. And when they're ignored, people begin to look elsewhere, not always through cheating, but often through detachment, escapism, busyness, distraction. They pour themselves into work, into hobbies, into anything that numbs the emptiness, not because they're evil, but because they're starving. And here's the thing, most of the time, the other person has no idea. They're not being malicious. They're not being selfish. They simply don't know what's needed, because it was never spoken clearly, or maybe it was spoken once or twice, but not with urgency, not with honesty. And so they assume everything is fine. But love can't thrive in the dark. It needs light. It needs light. It needs clarity. It needs honesty. If you have a need, whether it's affection, quality time, reassurance, emotional support, you must speak it, not in accusation, not in bitterness, but in humility and vulnerability. Say, "This is what makes me feel loved. This is what I need right now." It's not weakness, it's wisdom. And if you're on the receiving end of that need, hear me. Don't brush it off. Don't belittle it. Don't become defensive. Listen, really listen, and ask yourself, how can I love this person better? Because this is what love does. It leans in when it's tempted to pull away. It draws near when it's easier to distance. It doesn't wait until a need becomes a crisis. It sees the signs early. It pays attention. Sometimes the greatest act of love is simply asking, "What's been weighing on you?" and then listening without distraction. It's noticing when your partner is quieter than usual, more tense, more withdrawn, and instead of being irritated, being concerned. It's choosing to be a student of your partner's heart, not just knowing their favorite food or their routine, but knowing what brings them joy and what makes them feel forgotten. Love is not just about what we say, but about how deeply we are willing to tune in to the unspoken. But let me say this, tuning in doesn't replace speaking up. If something is missing, you need to say it. You need to give your partner the chance to love you well, because they can't read your mind, and the longer you wait, the harder it becomes. You can't keep hiding emotional needs and expect intimacy to survive. You can't keep walking through the same routines while your heart is aching for attention, for tenderness, for understanding. Something has to give. And sometimes what must give is our fear, our pride, our stubbornness, the lie that says they should already know. No, sometimes they don't, but they can know if you're willing to speak. And if you've been the one not listening, it's not too late to change. Begin today.
Begin by asking real questions and giving real time to listen. Let your partner know you want to be there for them, that their emotional well-being matters to you. Let them know you won't dismiss or mock their needs, and then show up again and again, not perfectly, but faithfully. A relationship is not built on grand events. It's built on the daily choice to see, to hear, to care. It's built in those quiet moments when needs are gently revealed and compassion is faithfully returned. That's what sustains love. The silence ends where humility begins, where honesty steps forward, where love listens, where needs are named and met, not out of duty, but out of delight. We live in a generation that idolizes busyness. We wear it like a badge of honor. We wake up and rush out the door. We answer emails while eating breakfast. We check our phones while having dinner. Our calendars are packed, our minds are scattered, and our hearts are stretched thin. We're always going, always achieving, always trying to stay one step ahead. And yet for all our movement, we are slowly drifting apart from the ones we love. You see, it's not usually some explosive moment that causes a relationship to fall apart. It's not always betrayal or infidelity. Sometimes the slow death of a relationship comes from something far more subtle: neglect. The kind of neglect that's unintentional, not malicious. The kind that says, "I'm just busy right now," one too many times. The kind that pushes emotional connection to the back burner, not because we don't care, but because we assume love will sustain itself. But it won't. Love must be nurtured. It must be pursued. It must be fought for, in the middle of crowded schedules and long work days and endless obligations. Because if we're not careful, the busyness of life will choke the life out of our relationships. There was a time when couples sat and talked, there was time for conversation, time for eye contact, time for asking, "How are you really?" and listening with our whole hearts. But today, we substitute deep conversations for quick check-ins. We substitute heartfelt words for emojis and distracted nods, and the soul starts to feel it, that subtle ache of being unseen, unheard, uncared for. We may still be in the same room, still living under the same roof, but connection is not about proximity, it's about presence, and presence cannot exist where distraction reigns. Presence cannot thrive when we're always somewhere else, in our minds, always checking the clock, always thinking about the next thing we have to do. And here's the tragedy: many people in relationships don't even realize what's slipping away. They think everything is fine because the bills are paid, the kids are fed, the chores are done. But inside, the relationship is starving for meaningful communication, for intentional connection. And that starvation, left unchecked, turns to silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the lonely kind. The kind that makes you feel more alone sitting next to someone than you ever did when you were by yourself. This kind of emotional drift doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with flashing lights. It comes quietly, with the missed conversations, the unanswered questions, the moments we're too tired to care, too busy to ask, too distracted to notice. And the worst part is that both people often feel it, but neither knows how to name it. So they go on living like everything's fine, while their hearts grow cold and distant. But love, real love, requires intentionality. It means carving out time, not waiting for it to appear. It means putting the phone down, turning the TV off, and saying, "Let's." It means choosing to be fully present, even when life is loud and messy. Because love doesn't survive on leftovers. It doesn't grow on convenience. It thrives where it's prioritized. We can't keep saying, "We'll connect later." Later turns into days, days into weeks, weeks into months. And before you know it, you wake up next to someone you barely know anymore. That didn't happen overnight. It happened through hundreds of little choices to postpone communication, to delay intimacy for the sake of busyness. And let's not fool ourselves into thinking this kind of neglect is harmless. No, it leaves scars. It creates distance that becomes harder and harder to close. And often, one partner feels it more intensely, carries the weight of that disconnection alone, wonders if they're the only one noticing, the only one trying. That feeling of being emotionally abandoned, even when the other person is physically present, is one of the deepest forms of pain in a relationship. So what do? We return, we slow down, we make space for each other again, we stop letting the urgent things drown out the important ones. Because few things are as important as protecting the bond between two people who promised to walk through life together. Intentional communication means asking questions, not just, "How was your day?" but "What's been heavy on your heart lately?" It means really listening, not waiting for your turn to speak, but listening to understand, to feel, to connect. It means creating rituals of connection. Maybe it's a daily walk, a weekly coffee, or 10 minutes before bed where phones are off and hearts are open. And it means checking in, not just on logistics, but on emotions. How are you really doing? Are you okay? What do you need from me right now? These are not small questions, they are lifelines. And when asked regularly, sincerely, they keep the heart soft, the bond strong, the love alive. Yes, life is busy, but busyness is not an excuse to let your relationship slide into the background. If anything, it's all the more reason to fight harder for intentionality, because in this fast-paced world, true connection is rare and precious. If we want to protect what matters most, we have to be deliberate. Sometimes, it will mean saying no to something good, so you can say yes to something better. Maybe it's skipping a meeting, turning off the game, leaving dishes in the sink, just so you can sit together, talk, pray, laugh, reconnect. Those moments might seem small, but over time, they become the threads that hold your relationship together. Love isn't maintained by accident. It's built and rebuilt, day by day, through small acts of attention, affection, and intentional communication. And when you give yourself to that work, when you push back against the tide of busyness and say, "You matter more," you will see the fruit. You will see the heart begin to open again. You will see the silence break. You will see the love return. Because at the end of the day, it's not what you achieved that matters most. It's who you loved well. It's not how full your schedule was, but how full your heart was. And that fullness comes not from doing more, but from being present, being available, being intentional. So stop and ask yourself, when was the last time I really connected with the one I love? When was the last time we talked, not about tasks, but about our heart? If the answer is hard to find, it's not too late. Start tonight, start now, because love is still possible if you're willing to slow down and choose.